playoff game, but they were only 23rd ranked in the National Football League at throwing the football. You lose one of your biggest weapons in Stephon Diggs. You wonder if they take a page out of San Francisco's playbook. They traded away to Forrest Buckner. They draft a younger version, a cheaper version of that. Will Minnesota do the same after getting this pick from Buffalo for Stephon Diggs?
I got to say, I've really enjoyed looking inside the head coach's houses. Mike Zimmer with the big fireplace and the fire roaring. Very Minnesota touch. The pick is in, and Roger Goodell is going full skull with the Vikings fans.
Let's go. Come on, let's go, Viking fans. With the 22nd pick in the 2020 draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU.
Well, here's where you're about to find out that sometimes drafting is kind of like high school recruiting. It's not an exact science. Justin, we apologize. ESPN gave you no stars coming out of high school, and you were listed as the number 308 receiver in the nation in the class of 2017. You didn't even crack the top 50 in the state of Louisiana. Safe to say, you made up for it. Your season was incredible. A school record 111 catches. And if it hadn't been for teammate Jamar Chase's 20 touchdown grabs, you would have had the most last season in college football at 18. Of course, he's not the first Jefferson to play football at LSU. Jordan, his oldest brother, was a quarterback there. And Ricky, another older brother, was an LSU defensive back 2013 to 2016. Michael Justin Jefferson was a late bloomer and came into this process a little later than some, and he has certainly made the most of it with an unbelievable career at LSU.
Yes, and hey, listen, I love this pick as a football player. Now, I'm really anxious to see how Minnesota will work this out because, you know, Adam Thielen works the slot a lot in Minnesota. Justin Jefferson was 99% out of the slot at LSU. So seeing how they mesh this together is going to be very interesting. But this kid can flat out play football. He made great plays deep, made plays over top of people, and when he does get the ball in his hands, he can take short passes and make long plays out of them. Justin Jefferson going to Minnesota. I tell you, DJ, Mel, that's going to be a great pick.
Yeah, look, you look at this player on tape, he reminds me so much of Keenan Allen and what he did in the slot, Mike. His ability to separate, he catches everything. He's always where he's supposed to be. He's a pro. And when I talked to the folks down at LSU, they said, look, his brother who played at LSU was roommates with Patrick Peterson. This kid was running routes against Patrick Peterson when he was a teenager. He's not going to be intimidated when he steps into an NFL locker room. And Mel, I had a buddy in the league that said this was Gary Kubiak's favorite receiver in the draft. He's going to catch 1,000,000 balls in Minnesota.
DJ, I'm surprised he was there. I thought he'd go more middle of the first round, that 13, 14, 15 area. The big games, Georgia, Oklahoma, Clemson, late in the year, he had 30 receptions in those 3 football games. Then he ran 4.43 at the combine when a lot of people thought he'd run 4.55. Joe Brady really improved, coaching up those receivers. He eliminated those drops, and Justin Jefferson became, like Joe Burrow, a completely different player in 2019 as he was in 2018. And that allowed him to move up from the second round into the first round.
Well, there you see GM Rick Spielman, and there is Justin Jefferson. Again, a replacement for what they lost when they got this pick, Stephon Diggs. That was part of a trade before the draft, but now let's go back. The Vikings are now up with the penultimate pick in the first round. Let's go to Commissioner Goodell.
You got to get that horn up. With the 31st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Jeff Gladney, defensive back, TCU.
All right, Lewis, tell a little bit us about Jeff Gladney, the cornerback out of TCU. He's been dealing with some knee injuries, but obviously people feel pretty strong about what his ability is.
Yeah, this is another guy who has a lot of upside, a lot of potential, a lot of speed. He just really needs to, again, develop his ability to finish on the football the last third of the down. But you can see here, just pinning the wide receiver to the sideline, staying in phase, going up high and high point in the football. And he's one of those guys that can get up on the line of scrimmage and press. He's shown pretty good zone coverage awareness. He'll tackle against the run. I like the development potential here. Look, you have a good athlete that really right now just needs some more coaching, needs some more refinement, but that's exactly what you're going to find at this point in the draft in a corner like Jeff Gladney.
I saw a little bit of Denzel Ward with just how quick and feisty and competitive he was. When you watch him in off coverage, he's very fluid, he's quick, he can drive on the football. He's an outstanding blitzer, and I think that toughness is what's going to endear him to his new team because that's the way they play on that side of the ball. I think this is a nice fit there with the Minnesota Vikings.
What do you think, Mel?
I like that draft. I mean, Justin Jefferson fell to them at 22. I didn't think he'd be there. Jeff Gladney is a guy, he's a smart football player. He knows how to use his hands, not get penalties. You'll say, well, he can be handsy. Well, he's smart. He knows how to get in there, still be physical, yet not draw penalty flags. I love his savvy, and I love the fact that he's already a guy coming into the NFL who should be a rookie starter and help that secondary, which is what Minnesota needs at that cornerback spot. I think the Vikings did a really good job with those first two picks.
Okay.
Go! With the 58th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Ezra Cleveland, tackle, Boise State.
Well, pretty much the opposite of the wide receiver. It is an offensive lineman, and it is Ezra Cleveland. And I'm going to tell you something that's significant as he just got the news. The former Boise State left tackle started the last 3 seasons for the Broncos. And by the way, why is this important? Well, the last 5 multi-year starters at left tackle for Boise State were all NFL draftees and started in the league several years. He was a big kid. How big? He was born 3 weeks early, and he weighed 11 pounds at birth. They said if he'd gone to term, he would have been a 15-pound baby. He's a big baby, and now the Vikings are hoping he's a big player, Lewis, for them.
Yeah, look, he is. He's 6'6", 311 pounds, ran 4.93 in the 40. Now, you would like for him to play that way, the way he tests. He doesn't always play that way, but look, he's young and he's developing there on the left side. He's a guy who's got good technique. When he keeps his pads down, you see right here what can happen. He can take defensive ends who line up in a 6 technique over him or in a 5 technique over him and just put them on the ground. He's a guy who, when you climbs up on the second level, he can use that big body to shield second-level defenders out of the way, and he's effective in that way as well. When he gets out on the perimeter, look, he has the athleticism to chase people down and make those kind of second-level blocks out there in space on jet sweeps and on screens and on second-level runs. He just needs to tie it all together, play a little bit stronger, play with more consistent pad level, but he's somebody who people told me his stock was rising as the draft approached.
Well, he is off the board now in Minnesota. An uncle of his said that Ezra would grow up to be 6'4" and 250 pounds. Let's just say he undershot that because he ended up at 6'6", 311 pounds. In other words, he's added 300 pounds since birth. Stay with us. College ball. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Vikings pick is in. Let's go back to the commissioner.
Go, baby! With the 89th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Cameron Dantzler, defensive back, Mississippi State.
All right, Cameron Dantzler is interesting because he's a little bit undersized at 188 pounds. But, Lewis, when you saw him play, he was one of the best defenders against that potent LSU offense this past year.
Yeah, really, this might have been the only corner all year long that really gave Jamar Chase a little bit of a problem at the line of scrimmage. And why is that? It's because Dantzler wasn't afraid to attack him, and he got up on him, and he pressed him, and he played him physical, and he talked to him down the field. You can tell he wouldn't back down from him. And you can see here, this is a long, lanky corner that has a lot of physical range. It can really be a problem for people as far as trying to get off the line of scrimmage. And he's a guy who's not afraid of the physical side of the game as well. What kept GMs from really warming up to him was the fact that he didn't run a fast 40 time. And at cornerback, that is a requirement. That is something that you need if you want to go higher in the draft. But I'll tell you this, he has got the attitude, he's got the confidence, and I need to reemphasize this. Jamar Chase pretty much ran through every corner he went up against this past year from LSU. This was the one that really got up and challenged him and said, you're not doing that to me.
The Vikings have taken DJ Wonnum out of South Carolina. Wonnum, a 3-year starter and 2-time captain for the Gamecocks, Lewis.
Yeah, they must like guys who are about 6'4 and a half, 258 pounds. They already got Daniil Hunter on the roster. And look, this is a guy who ran a 4.73 in the 40, has 34 1/8 inch arms, and what he is he's a combination 34 outside backer, 4-3 defensive end that plays with tremendous heavy hands in the run game. And then in the pass game, he has tremendous cornering speed. He has the ability to get to that high side pad, use his hands, and then close on the quarterback and finish. He had 5 sacks in 2019 and had 15 for his career. Now, he's also a guy who you can move around as what they call a joker in a 2-point stance. He doesn't always have to be at the end of the line of scrimmage. They can move him inside and just have him stand up over the center and pick his gap. This is a tremendous value pick in my estimation for them because of the versatility he gives them. And he, again, is in the mold of a guy like Daniil Hunter, which is exactly what Coach Mike Zimmer wants up there on defense.
So there you see the pick page by the Minnesota Vikings. They get Justin Jefferson. Hopefully he'll fill the slot that they needed when Stephon Diggs was traded to the Bills. Cornerback Jeff Gladney, Ezra Cleveland, Cameron Dantzler, who played really well against that LSU offense from Mississippi State, and then DJ Wonnum. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, to improve, and if you want your team to improve, like the Minnesota Vikings, you take James Lynch out of Baylor, selected Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, set the Bears' single-season sack record with 13.5. He also led the Bears in tackles for loss, 19.5, forced fumbles 3, and fumble recoveries 2. Oh, and Mel, just for fun, he also blocked 2 kicks.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Rick Spielman's doing a good job with the Vikings putting together a very solid draft. And James Lynch is one of those guys we talked about, Trey, is a warrior. He's a football player. You don't have a 300-plus pounder here. I think you have a Dean Lowry type. Dean Lowry came out of Northwestern, has been solid with the Green Bay Packers. That's what I think James Lynch will be. You think about a guy with scheme versatility, had 19.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 of those were sacks. Uses his hands extremely well, can win outside, inside, plays with really good power, never lacked for effort. You gotta like James Lynch. If you watch him at Baylor throughout his career, what a football player, a key guy in every game, got into that backfield, wreaked havoc against the run, and got the sack numbers that you want as well. I've always been a big fan of James Lynch, Trey. I know you are as well, and I think this is a really nice pick for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, as soon as Matt Rule got the job at Baylor, the first thing he did, he drove down to Austin, Texas, about 90 minutes away, and said, we've got to get James Lynch. There you see Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman. Great job by them. We're all raving about Cliff Kingsbury's Arizona pad. The Mike Zimmer Minnesota Hunting Lodge theme is also very, very strong if we're doing head coach Cribb's analysis, and we have to do that during this draft. Full beard by the time he was 13. So we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, Troy Dye from Oregon is now off the board to Minnesota. Another great pick by the Minnesota Vikings. Mel, the only player in Oregon history to lead the team in tackles 4 straight years.
Yeah, Spielman's fortifying this Vikings roster. No question, Rick Spielman, I think, has done a really good job. You look at Troy Dye. Think about a guy, only player in school history to lead the team in tackles 4 straight seasons, production through the roof. Played this final season with that right hand cast with the broken thumb, yet he still had 84 tackles. That first game against Auburn, he had 15 tackles, 10 solos. Against Utah, 8 tackles and an interception. That's the key with him. He's not a take-on guy. He's a runaround guy. He's very athletic, lateral pursuit. He's excellent. And what he's going to be key in the NFL with his Viking defense is the way he can handle coverage responsibilities. Also in the Rose Bowl, stripped Jonathan Taylor, caused a fumble there. Very active, very alert football player, Troy Dye.
Now listen.
Yeah, he is the
Zimmer
quintessential 4-3 wheel backer. And I will say this about him. There's really nothing he can't do on the football field. Sorry, Trey, I just wanted to jump in here. The only question there is about Troy Dye is are you committed to the game? Are you committed to doing everything that you can possibly do to realize that extraordinary potential that you have? Because as a prototypical 4-3 wheel backer, when you watch this young man play, He can run, he can catch, he will strike you in run hit situations, and he's going up to Minnesota and playing for a defensive coach that coaches a group of linebackers that are as good as any in the National Football League. So they just added another tremendous athlete to add to that group, and Troy Dye is a fantastic prospect.
Yeah, Minnesota's having a heck of a draft, but you can say what you want about the first round, but what they've done since there, Cameron Dantzler, James Lynch out of Baylor, now Troy Dye out of Oregon. Nice couple today, including John Hightower. The Vikings going with the Temple product, Harrison Hand, Daniel Jeremiah, the corner.
Yeah, Harrison Hand transferred from Baylor, Trey, and somebody that when you study him, you see somebody with average speed, but he is tough and physical, and what you would expect from a Temple player beginning his career there. You see it there at Trey's Baylor Bears. But somebody's just a very efficient mover, not dynamic, not super explosive. Had 3 picks this year. I think he has the ability to potentially kick inside and play some nickel if you want him to. But overall, you get a player from Temple, as you'd expect. He's Temple tough.
So he goes to Minnesota as they continue to load up a lot.
Got it, Trey. Look at KJ Osborne. He goes from Buffalo Bulls to Miami. You see him here when you talk about a guy with some explosiveness. Ran 4.48 at the combine, 37.5 vertical. Goes to Miami and he showcases all that ability in the return game. So I think you get a guy who can catch the football, gets out of his cut quickly, can obviously spun around some cornerbacks both at Buffalo and Miami. Was impressed by that at both schools. And you talk about him at Miami this past year, was a key part of that pass offense. Obviously in the punt return game, averaged almost 16 yards for punt return. Was also a good kickoff returner, but the punt return ability certainly adds to his value. The hands, the concentration in traffic across.
We move back to the Minnesota Vikings and their selection, Daniel Jeremiah, taking a look at Josh Metellus, the safety.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen a lot of Michigan players come off the board today, and Josh Metellus, as a safety, aligns as that high safety and plays in the deep middle of the field. He's quick to read, range, and drive on the football. You see him with a pass breakup right there. He started a lot of football for the Wolverines, 38 starts over his career. The speed is about what you'd expect. He plays to that 4.55, but the instincts help him look a little bit faster than that. I think he's going to be, again, somebody special teams in sub situations. We're at that portion of the draft, and that's what you're going to get with Metellus.
And that is what they got with Josh Metellus in Minnesota, with him in Tennessee. Meanwhile, Kenny Willekes is finally off the board. Another interesting defensive pick for the Minnesota Vikings out of Michigan State. Look at that family. Everything from a cardiothoracic surgeon to an Olympic-level trampoline gymnast to a concert pianist. The Willekes family is very, very big and very, very talented. By the way, Willekes won the Burlsworth Trophy, which is awarded annually to the nation's best player who is a former walk-on. He is one of 7 siblings there, and his story of making it from a walk-on to becoming the player he was, Mel, really, really incredible.
He had to earn everything he got at Michigan State. He's not Mr. Irrelevant. That's coming up, but he is a 7th-round draft choice. He's going to have to battle his way onto that roster. You're talking about the Minnesota Vikings there with Kenny Willekes, but I think you look at a guy classic overachiever. You know, he ran 4.87, doesn't have the long arms you want in a defensive end. As you say, former walk-on, but he has that knack for getting after the quarterback. He had 20 tackles for loss in 2018. He had 10.5 sacks this past year. What he does, he anticipates that snap. He wants to beat that offensive tackle out of his stance, and he does it a decent amount of time. You see it there as well. They can't turn and handle Kenny Willekes coming off the edge. Now, will the NFL be too much for him when he's going against the best offensive tackles in the world? Maybe, but it's the kind of guy you don't want to bet against because he's overcome the odds as a walk-on, becoming into a heck of a player at Michigan State for the Spartans.
To that point, Mel, he was discouraged after one workout and was running wind sprints at Michigan State, and no one else was out there except one other person. Head coach Mark D'Antonio, who walked up to Willekes and said, hang in there, keep going, you're going to make it. And he did, and now he's on the selection of the Minnesota Vikings in the 2020 draft. So as we can